Hi, Auntie Lisa. How are you?
Hello, I've never done this before, and you didn't tell me where it was.
I
So I
know,
was
right?
looking all over the place.
Yeah,
It just came through.
yeah, yeah, no, I'm sorry about that. I'm glad you are here. Yeah. So, guys, we're about to get started. This is your most anticipated live stream podcast on Facebook, and we are Q Virtual Studios still running 30% of all products, all services. You can reach out through our WhatsApp contact. I'm going to paste the WhatsApp number in the comment section or in our email before we get started. Make sure to send us an email regarding website or design, graphic design, video editing, and you name it. So for inquiries, just make sure to check out the number in the comment section in our email. So before we get into the discussion, there are a few stuff I would like you guys to know. This show is basically about education and telling us young people, particularly young people, about how to go about doing certain things. Because a lot of us, we are just like following the crowd. We don't really know exactly what we are doing until we are being told the reality. And who is going to tell us that reality? So, which is why we decided to bring you this show. And for every episode that is brought to you, trust me, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be educative, and you are going to enjoy it. So, make sure to get your favorite refreshment, sit back and relax. Make sure to share this with your friends and family so that they can also benefit from this discussion. So welcome, Anisa, to episode 3 of Beyond the Map. How do you feel being here for the first time?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Mohammed.
Can you hear me clearly now?
Uh, if you can come up a little bit, I have my volume all the way
All
up.
right. Is it okay now? Can you hear me?
It's a little better, but I'm struggling. I'll try and hear you.
All right. Just hold on, just a little bit. Just a little bit. I think there's something with the sound. Whoa, guys, just a little bit. You know these things happens, right? Can you hear me clearly now?
It's a little bit better. It's a little lower than I'm used to with podcasts, but we'll get through it.
All right. Just give me a few minutes so I get the sound fixed up for you. Just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. The sound is really low. Can you help me? All right. So is it okay now? Much better now?
That's a little bit better. Yes, that's a little bit better. Thank you.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get on to it. The moment you all have been waiting for. How does it feel being beyond the mic for the first time, Miss
Oh,
Lisa?
it's wonderful. It's good to see you doing your passion.
Right.
I know that when I saw you in Ghana many years ago, you were just starting out, and so it's a good thing to see growth. That's awesome.
Right. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. So, can, right about now, we want to get on to the moment you all have been waiting for. Can you kind of introduce yourself to the audience so that they get to know a little bit about you and your background?
Okay, sure. My name is Lisa Henry, and I've lived so many lives. I am a performing artist, a jazz performing artist, based in Kansas City, Missouri, in America. I am also an educator, and I spent many years as I was building my career. I was working in the field of drug and alcohol rehabilitation, as well as social work for developmentally disabled adults.
Right.
So all while I was building my career, I spent a lot of time in mental health fields. Last 5 years, I've been working as a music teacher in a school district,
Okay.
and you would be surprised with the schools. We see a lot of mental health issues in kids very, very young. So I've been a part of the mental health arena most of my life, just in
Right.
the work that I've done.
Right. And that's why we are glad to have you because you know, sometimes like someone who have been there, done that, when they are telling you something about a particular situation, you get to listen, you get to learn, and you get to how to approach the issue. Because a lot of the time, we young people, we get lost, and there's nobody
Mhm.
out there to really talk to, right? You
Mm,
you find yourself in a mental stress situation where you feel like you want to speak out, but everybody's gonna say, okay, this guy's a man and this is a woman. The woman has the right to speak,
mhm,
and the guy doesn't have the right to speak. But people are dying out of this situation. People are committing suicide.
mhm.
You get me? So I think having you here today is going to be a blessing. Honestly, it's going to be a blessing, and I believe that we are going to learn a lot just by listening to you. Myself is going to learn a lot too.
Well, thank you so much. And let me just let your audience know, I am not a clinical psychologist. I am not a licensed therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist, okay? But
Right,
I consider myself a community educator. And what I do a lot of, even here in Kansas City, I like to educate communities and connect them with resources. So your audience should know that I forwarded you a lot of information this morning that we will be able to forward anybody who has questions about mental health and the Muslim community, mental health, just overall. So I wanted to make sure that I give lots of resources, because this is how platforms like this can really be effective and be a learning platform for everybody across the
right,
world. Yeah.
right. And guys, after this podcast, I'm going to be sharing with you these resources. So, in case you need them, make sure feel free to reach out to me and let me know. I'm going to share with you guys. Right? I have all of the resources available. So, moving on to the questions, Miss Lisa, in your experience, why is it important to raise health awareness about, like, why is it important to raise mental health awareness, especially for young people?
Oh gosh, that's a great question, and I've been thinking about it ever since you sent me the questions. I don't think it's ever too young to learn about just how your mind works. For your audience who's watching me, I am in December I'll be a 3-year brain aneurysm survivor. So my brain, there was a blood vessel burst and I
Right,
almost
right,
died. Okay. And so I tell you that because there are a lot of situations, as you mentioned, that can lead to mental health that is not so healthy. Now, of course, a burst aneurysm, that's a physical issue that happens in your brain, but there
right,
are other factors like stress, high blood pressure, all of those things kind of, mixed in with just day-to-day living. And so no matter how young you are, I don't think I don't think you're too young to start talking about, how to keep your stress levels down, how to do things that bring you joy, such as what you're doing right now, living and doing something that you're passionate about, so that
right,
you can create a life that you love to wake up to. Um, and I also think it's important for young people to start learning about mental health, because this is a different world now. You all are really facing a lot of challenges, and it doesn't really matter which continent you're on. The world is changing. This is a different place. And so you need to, be able to reach out and to tell people, look, I'm confused. I'm kind of scared. We don't often like to admit that we're afraid, you know,
right, right,
and it's okay to talk about those things. And we need to destigmatize that. We need to let everybody know, young, old, it's okay to say how you really feel, and to be truthful about your feelings. That's really where it starts. So just being open and honest so that you can get tools and develop tools that will allow you to live a life where you're not so scared and you're not so anxious and you're not so confused. But I know, just being young, and I get it, being young is just an interesting time. Okay, you are trying to find your place in the world, and you have all of
right,
these, yeah, and you're just trying to, you're all of these images are coming at you. you're getting, these pictures of the Western image of what success is, and everybody wants to do that. And, you're getting a lot of messages, And I think it's important to listen to the message that's inside of you.
Right. It's always important to do that. But like I have one principle in me, like whenever I want to do something, I sit first. I firstly seek help from God first, and
Mhm.
then I listen to that voice inside of me, right? So I seek few advices from people. Like I talk to people, oh, hey, how do I go about doing this? Or how do I go about doing that? Right? So when they give me these advices, I now sit down in my corner and analyze it, right? Look at the pros and cons of these things.
Mhm.
So what impact is this going to have on the people who I'm connected with? These are things I start thinking about.
Mhm.
So by the time I'm able to come up with my final conclusion, the next thing I'm into is the execution. So most often, what I'm trying to say is that, like, just like how Miss Lisa mentioned about listening to that voice inside of you, right? You always have to pay attention to details. Like, make sure to always pay attention to details and make sure, don't be scared, like, don't be afraid as a person.
Mhm.
People will say, okay, this is a man, a man is not supposed to cry, a man is not supposed to seek for help when he's mentally disturbed. Like, I think that that's being selfish, right? We are not creating a friendly environment for humans as a whole. We are all humans. There's that time where you feel your back is against the wall. You need to talk to someone. You need help. So find that person who you can talk to mentally and get that relief, get yourself rejuvenated, get yourself going again.
Yes, and Muhammad, I also want to say, because I think in the times that we're living in now, I think it's important to remember that each of us holds a responsibility for our fellow man or woman's mental health. What do I mean by that? I mean, if I see you and you look a little down, can I give you an encouraging word? That's helping with your mental health. Okay,
Right,
instead of saying something that might tear you down or make you feel bad about yourself. We have a lot of negative images in the world.
right,
So when we see each other face to face, it's really important to ask yourself, how can I help Muhammad right now? What words can I say to encourage him? Because when we feel encouraged, we do wonderful things, you
right,
know
right.
and so we each need to be thinking about that. And I mean everybody, young, old, black, white, everybody needs to be doing that, because we have a lot of meanness and nastiness going on in the world right now. And
Oh,
I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of a world that encourages people like you to do big things and to help other people.
yeah. And I must admit this to you, like I felt really good. But when I met you the first time when you saw me in Ghana, like like the reception I got from you, that actually made me feel like, okay, I think I have something in me that I can continue with.
Yeah.
It's always good to make people feel good about themselves. It's always good. But we are always being selfish and me as humans. That's
Yeah.
why people get into depression and they run into suicide. That's why you
Yes.
find people today they have to take alcohol or maybe intoxication to feel good. But that's not going to make you feel good. Just by talking to someone who is going to make you feel like, or give you a hope, make you feel like, okay, all is not lost. You can still move on. That's a
Mhm.
therapy on its own, you know?
Yes, y-
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And, I know that depending on where you live in the world, here in America, we have quite a few resources now for mental health. We even have online mental health counseling that we can access. Some people may not have that. And so what I encourage communities to do, and you can start this wherever you are, okay? You can just
right,
start weekly meetings of people getting together, especially for the young people, just getting together and asking each other, how you feeling? Are you doing okay? How can we support you? What do you need? Those questions mean the world, because people go through the whole day and people don't even ask, are you doing okay? Is there anything I can help you with?
Right.
Is there a resource that I can get you that'll help your life a little bit now? So wherever you are in the world, until you can get to professional help, if you need that, okay? But
Right.
in the meantime, you can start it in your village, in your community, just right there where you are. And you can say, you know what, we're going to meet every week and we're just going to check in with each other. And we're going to make sure that our mental health is good.
Right.
If you need to cry, you can cry. If you need to scream, you can scream.
You have
You know,
to. Yes, you
you
have
have
to.
to, but to be able to do that in community and with people who you feel safe with and you feel really support you, that's important.
Right.
That's really important.
Right. And that's what we need. We need to build a friendly environment, check up on people.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not just about the money or the luxuries. These things are good, they are very good. But that just, like you said, hello, how are you? How do you feel today? Are you
Mhm.
okay? It makes the person feel, okay, this person is thinking about me. You know, this person is concerned about my well being, all these things. But we don't have that today in our environment. People are so busy to the extent that uh, that little checkup, you know, that little meeting of with friends, like in a positive environment, or
Mhm.
everybody's just toxic, you know,
Yes.
everybody's just toxic.
Yes.
Yeah,
And you know, I think we all have the power to change that part of our world. I can't change the whole world, but I can change my household,
yeah,
okay? My community, you know, because it does, you know, it starts in the home and then it starts in the neighborhood and then it goes out into the community. So, and I have to say this because young people, especially across the continent of Africa, if you're listening, and Saudi Arabia, I mean, everywhere, you young folks, you are the next generation. You're going to be running things. And it's important that your mental health is together so that you can make good, sound decisions for all involved. You all see what's going on in the world. And I'm sure that when you get together as young people, I'm sure you say, well, gee, if I was in charge, I wouldn't
yeah,
do that, you
right,
know?
right,
And so we're depending on you. You know, I'm getting
right,
older, so I'm going to be looking to you all to make the good decisions. But it's hard to make those good decisions if you haven't been taking care of your own mental health.
right.
Okay. So
Sure.
I have to say that to you. And as I see what's going on, because I keep tabs on everybody. I'm watching what's going on in Nigeria and Ghana and young people and those, oh my gosh, you all are on fire and you're smart. You know things, you know technology. I didn't even know how to get on here today, and I think I'm pretty good with technology. But you taught me something new today that I didn't know. But we're all learning
Oh,
from each other, and we're all growing. But young people, you all are the key. We got to have you mentally healthy. We have
right,
to,
right.
so you can change all this craziness going on.
Yeah, so there's a little joke that I like to crack. Like, I always tell people I'm big on mental health.
Yeah,
Like, if it's going to cost me my peace of mind, honestly, I'm out. I
yeah,
don't care what you
yeah,
bring into the table. If it's going to cost me my mental health, I'm out.
yes.
Like, I like peace of mind because it is the mind that I use to concentrate, like to get creative. So I don't like people messing around my mental health. You understand?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I always try to go out of my way to make people feel good around me,
It's important. It's really
right?
important. And you mentioned something earlier, Mohammed, that I wanted to go back to because you talked about when I said, you know, to listen to that voice inside of you. You mentioned your spiritual connection with God.
Yeah.
And I want to say, because that sometimes in the Western world, that piece is lost,
Mm,
and we are a spiritual people. You happen to be Muslim. I was raised Christian, but I just consider myself spiritual. But that is always a piece of my mental health.
right.
And I think it's important that you said that, because I believe that we can honor our spiritual tradition and still look at mental health and get the help we need if we need to talk to a professional, if we need to just talk to each other. So to anyone listening, whatever you need with your mental health to make it better, to get healthier, make sure to include that spiritual piece, because that is important, especially if that's a tradition in which you've grown up with. That's very
Right,
important.
right.
Yeah.
Always have a connection with God. Always. Yeah. So that takes us to the next question. What are some of the simple, effective strategies people can use to manage stress in their daily lives?
Oh gosh, that's a, that's a big one. And I read that question, and all of the resources that I sent you today. Um, okay, one of my questions is always, what is the context of that question? See, stress for me in America might look different than stress for you in Saudi Arabia.
Right, right,
You know, stress for me is different than a woman who is in Ghana right now trying to, get water to her village. It's a different sort of stress. So the first thing that I would say is to identify, are we talking stress, or are we talking just day-to-day life that is just hard, but it's something that you do every day? Like, I don't like washing the dishes if I don't have to. I'd like to do something else creative, but I know it needs to be done. Now, that's not really stressful, but if I could hire someone to come in and do it, I certainly would. But it's
right.
part of my daily life. It's things that I have to do. Um, the stress, I'm going to tell you, from my perspective, again, I'm not a licensed psychologist or clinical person in that respect. But in the time that I've been around the mental health field, and I myself am always going to therapy because I believe therapy just keeps me in my mind very, very healthy. Okay. And it's good to check in with someone who doesn't even know you, you know, to
Right,
get a different
right.
perspective, So when you're asking the question, strategies that people can use to manage stress, well, first identify the stress. Okay. So when
Okay.
you identify the stress, maybe the stress is, I feel I feel like I don't have enough time. Well, maybe one of the strategies to alleviate that is to do better time management.
Right,
Okay.
right, right, right.
Maybe you
I
have to
agree with
wake
you.
up a little bit earlier, you know?
Mm,
Um, so we're going to look at the stress, and we're going to ask ourselves, okay, what can I do? Because a lot of times the stress that we have personally, it's really because of some of the decisions we've made,
right.
you know?
Mm.
It's kind of like, yeah, I knew I should have been doing my homework, but I decided to hang out with my friends instead. And
I
that's
can
why I
relate.
got,
I'm a young person. I can relate. So,
yes,
yeah.
yes. And so that's why I got a bad grade on that test. Or, so that was a personal decision that you made that happen. So that stress, you can take care of that all by yourself. That means you got to do your homework and study, and then you can go hang out with friends.
Mm,
So those are easy ways to look at, how can I alleviate stress? Now, there are some things that you have no control over. Okay. Um,
mm.
every day I'm listening to the news, and my heart is just really heavy because I'm, there's a war over here, there's a conflict over there. And in the middle of all of that, I see young people, I see children. And so they don't have any control of that, you know? And so I find myself wondering, well, gee, how do you tell them to get unstressed? How do you tell a teenager who's in a war zone, let's lower your stress? It's hard to
Yeah,
do that when bombs are dropping,
right.
And I know that's an extreme sort of example, but I I have to talk about it because it's happening. And
It's happened.
so it is. And I think, and this is why I asked you, I needed to include information that was not just from a Western perspective, because we don't we don't have a lot of stories about being in a war zone and not being able to go to school and go to work. But because I've traveled a lot, I realize that I'm very blessed that I can say that. But
Mm.
there are places that I've been where that's not the case. I know that your home country, Liberia, back in the 90s, you had that very thing happen, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm.
So I'm very respectful of that. And that humbles me because, stress, relieving stress looks different depending on where you are in the world and depending what your stressors are. My stresses would probably make you laugh because it's really not stress.
For real?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's my stresses are more like, oh, they're irritations more than stress.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
But when I travel, I see it's a reminder of what real stress looks like. Okay. A mother
Right.
who can't feed her children, that's stress. Okay. A
Mm.
mother or a father who can't find work to support their family, that's stress.
Yes.
Yes. So, if identifying the stress is really important. Now, for young people, and if you're a young person and you're not dealing with a war zone or anything like that, um, there are always some things that you can do. Um, if you're feeling, like you don't know where you fit in the world, that's where those community gatherings are important. And I think young people should really start doing more of that, regardless of whether there's an adult around. You all should get together and say, hey, you know what? We're going to do this for us because we want to grow up healthy. We want to think straight. But
Right.
you know what? Maybe we don't have all of the resources that we'd like to have. But let's get together, check in, let's talk about things. Let's see where people are stressed. And let's see if we can, do some activities that lower our stress. For example, that I do music.
Yeah.
Music has been a part of my life for my entire life. And I really believe that it's because of music that my stress level as a human being has been pretty low. I mean, compared to a lot of things.
Mm.
I have had my, periods where I felt very stressed, but I'm involved in music and creating something beautiful. Traveling. I love to travel. Traveling takes my stress level all the way down because I look forward to meeting people from different nations, from different cultures, different religions. I love that. So early on, and what I'll tell young people, tap into those things that really, really make you happy.
Right.
Okay. That
Right.
that
Right.
bring you joy, and it can be something really, it doesn't matter if it's silly to anybody else. If it makes you feel good, do it. If you draw, if you paint. When I was in Ghana, everybody's playing soccer or football. You all call it football.
Yeah.
you know, and I was in I was in Rawlings Square, and I just saw all of these young people just having a ball playing football. And that's what it's all about. Find
Right.
games, get out in nature, connect with other people. There's so many creative. See, you all are young and you're not set in your ways yet, so you can think of all sorts of creative things to do together.
Right. Right. And that's for me. That's my lifestyle. Like most often, like what I do to myself is I don't stress myself over situations I don't have control over. Like life will always happen to you,
Yes.
always, whether you like it or not. You are always going to face situations like that's going to keep you awake, that's going
Hmm.
to put you in a state of depression. So the best thing that I do is I find my favorite activities that I like to do.
Yeah.
So if it's for me to go out there and shoot content just to release stress, I will do. If
Yeah.
it's for me to go and watch soccer just to release stress, I will do that. If it is for
Yeah.
me to get my favorite meal to eat, I will do.
Yeah.
If it is for me to
Yeah.
just hang out with a friend or maybe my favorite person, I will do.
Yeah.
Because in the end, your well-being is what matters. If something happens to you today, people are going to move on.
Yes.
they're
Yes.
going to forget about you. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, I tell you, like I said, I almost died, Muhammad. I almost died. And
For real?
I'm very conscientious now of time.
Mm.
And to the young people listening, I will tell you, learn this lesson now. You don't have to wait until you get older. Your time is your currency. That's your money.
I
Okay?
like that. I like that.
Yeah. You spend that very wisely. Spend it on things and people and experiences that matter. Don't waste it. Because what I learned being in a hospital, I was in the hospital for 30 days, and there were some times I didn't know if I was coming home. They had told my son to plan a funeral for me. That's how bad it was.
Ooh,
Okay. And somehow, by God's grace, I'm still here. And so, what I feel compelled to tell everybody is do not be sloppy with your time. We all are here for a brief period, and then
right.
we are no more. But the
Hmm.
time you're here, what can you do to make yourself and those around you happy? How can you help people learn? How can you help people be the best that they can be? Those are all important questions. So,
Right.
you know, and again, you're not too young to start thinking this way. You know,
Mm.
I'm much older than you, but I wish that someone had these conversations with me when I was younger, your age, you know,
Mm. Yeah.
because mental health was not really spoken about a lot. And I think it's now in the last, what, 25, 30 years where we're really starting to talk about it openly, and it's not a stigma, because there was a time where if you said mental health, people would look at you and say, oh no, you know. There are even still some cultures where if you're having mental illness or mental health, people will look at you and think that you were possessed by demons
Yeah.
or some sort of thing. Yeah. And so there's a lot of education that needs to happen. That's another reason why I sent you all those resources. Everybody watching, Muhammad's got some great resources I sent him. So ask for him. He's got lots of stuff.
Yeah. Sure.
And I've got a lot more.
And I'll definitely be sharing with you guys. Okay. If you need that, just let me know. I'm going to paste my WhatsApp contact in the comment section. So from where I come from, Liberia as a country, we fought war. We went to a
Yes.
bloody war. Like it was really nasty. For a lot of young people, up to this date, there are a lot of youths in Liberia who haven't yet healed from the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they behave like abnormal. They behave in a certain way, like you feel like maybe this person is possessed. They are not possessed. They need rehabilitation. Some of them need to go
Yes.
to rehab. They need someone to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
They need
Yes.
people to always give them hope because there are lots of things. Some of them, their parents were wealthy out there before the war came. Like
Yeah.
my father, for example, like wasn't that wealthy, but we were comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
He used to at least earn us like our meal a day, and we were going to go to school. But when the war came,
Yeah.
we had to go back to square one. So it created
Yeah.
a lot of setbacks. So because of that trauma,
Yes.
many young people today in my country, I hope and pray that the government is going to invest more resources in rehabilitation and mental health. You find a lot of youth on drugs, people are drinking alcohol here and there because they're depressed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I shared with you a video, and I want to share this with your listeners. It's a documentary. It's a little bit, it's about 35 minutes or so, and it's called Welcome Back, a documentary about living in Liberia with mental illness. And I will tell you, this video was amazing. It was made by Doctors Without Borders,
Yeah, MSF.
doctorswithoutborders.com. And I will tell you, it was very eye-opening because I'm familiar with a little bit of that history that you talked about with
Mm,
Liberia. But
yeah,
I looked at that video and I said, wow, that's amazing. Now, since that video, I believe Liberia is they have started to add more mental health professionals in the area. And there's a place called the Carter Center in Liberia, www.cartercenter.org. and they also do a lot of programming around mental health. So Liberia is moving in the right direction. You know, I I'm like you. I hope to see more of that, because the way that things are happening, even in different parts of the world, we're going to need more help, mental health care professionals. We're just going to need more counselors. But until then, what can you do in your community right now? And a lot of it just involves people coming together and supporting one another and being able to talk about how they're feeling.
Right. Just a little bit of speaking and reaching out to people we love. You know, we need to rewrite the love. We need to rewrite love. We're using bold letters. We need to love one another. You don't have to wait for me to die before you express love to me. You don't need
Right.
to. You get what I mean. You don't need to wait for in our African culture. Like, you'll be sick, depressed, and nobody's going to reach out to you with any level of help or even support. But when you die, then you realize that resources, financial resources starts coming in. People will be pledging, okay, I can provide this, I can provide that. All these things are happening. But you find the person is stressed up, they're depressed. Because of that anxiety in them, they end up losing their life. So
Yes.
we need to learn to love ourselves as humans. We need to learn to support
Absolutely.
one another. Yeah.
You're right.
Mm.
I totally agree. And we have a saying here in America: we want to give you your flowers while you're alive.
Right, right.
That means we want to honor people, and we want to reach out while they're alive and while they need help. That's when people need you. And so, yeah, we need to do more of that. Absolutely.
More of that. Yeah. So speaking of more of that, that takes us to the next question, Miss Lisa. How can uh, how can communities work together to reduce the stigma associated with mental health?
Oh, yeah. See, all of my research that I've been, looking at, it's going to take education. And what's wonderful about living in this time is that you can get on the internet and learn about anything.
Mm,
And what I'm going to suggest, and you've got a lot of resources and websites that I gave you this morning in
right?
writing, that people share those resources, because if you have an internet access, you can learn about every mental health disorder. You can learn about trauma. You can learn about stress release. You can learn about all of that just by getting on the internet. Even if nobody around you can teach you, you know, you've
Mm,
got the World Wide Web that can teach you so many things. I was telling you about, oh goodness, he's a sheikh, and he had this wonderful presentation. I hope I get his name, Sheikh Bilal Assad, and he was talking about the 15 types of risk in life. And oh, his presentation was phenomenal. And I found that right on YouTube. And what was amazing, because it was coming from a Muslim perspective, and one of the risks in life was mental health.
yes. Yeah.
So that's a part of the spiritual, um, that's a part of the spiritual edict, or the spiritual tradition of Islam, is that you have good mental health. And I said, wow, I hope that everybody knows that. Now, I'm not Muslim, and I went searching for it. And so I thought, wow, that's beautiful. I don't even think that's in the Bible, in the Christian Bible. But,
Yeah.
your
Something
tradition, I'm sorry, go
like
ahead.
okay. I was just trying to chip in something a little bit. In Islam, like they have something in the Arabic text called amana. Amana is trust.
Hmm.
So your body is a trust of God, right? You should
Hmm.
prioritize it. Islam places
Yeah.
great emphasis on you prioritizing your well-being. So that starts with
Mm.
your personal hygiene, your mental health, the way you carry yourself, the way you speak to people, and all that.
Yes.
So it's a great religion that actually just prioritize mental health. So the scholar you mentioned from Australia, he's great. I follow him a couple of years now, and he's really
Okay.
impacting young people, especially when it comes to mental health. I would encourage you to take some time off, maybe to read a little bit about it. It's great.
Yeah, I truly enjoyed it. I truly enjoyed it. And I, I thought, I said, this can integrate very well into someone who's getting any professional mental health, services,
Yeah.
because this is already written in to your religious, doctrines. So that it makes all the sense in the world. So you don't
Mm.
have to, because for a long time, and I don't know if this was the same in the Islamic faith, but if you were in the Black Christian faith for many years, we didn't really look at going to a therapist. We looked at talking to the pastor.
Mm.
That was our therapy. And that there is some good in that. But there are people who are dealing with some mental health issues that really need a professional.
Mm. Right.
Okay. And
Uh,
so I think that there are times when both can work well together,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
there are times where both the spiritual aspect of it and you talking to a professional. There's nothing wrong in
Absolutely.
you seeking being the religious person and seeking help from a professional. That's the contradiction that people all of the time sometimes have. Like, okay, me being religious doesn't mean that means that I have to just sit here and just, you know, like limit myself to this position. No, you can be a religious person and also reach out to a profession. There are people
Yeah.
who God, in His divine wisdom, like has given the wisdom too, the knowledge when it
Right.
comes to how to handle some situations. You know, so He God have given them that wisdom. So all you need to do as a
Yeah.
person is to reach out to them for help. Maybe
Yes.
through consultation, sharing out the problems with them, you'll be okay.
Absolutely. And your question about what communities can do, that's certainly one of the areas. Um, Asking the question, how can we marry our spiritual life with the mental health um, information and education from the professionals? How can
Mm,
we do that? You know, and can we look at mental health as something that is just normal, just as normal as going to the hospital and making sure that your physical body is well? That should be something normal. If somebody has a mental challenge, we should not ostracize them from the community. We need to bring them in. We need to
right,
hold them, love them, support them, and help them get the help they need.
right,
you know and I,
right,
I think that as we begin to normalize mental health and mental health services, I think we're getting better. I think we're getting better across the board. I mean, the fact that you and I are talking about this, and we're from two different faith traditions, and we're
right.
talking about mental health.
Mm,
Years ago, that never would have happened.
never, never. But
You
I
know.
think there like there should be no level of discrimination like when it comes to people that believe, right?
Hmm.
What I can do as a person, as a Muslim, like is to sell out Islam to you in a beautiful way. If you are interested, you come over. But in the actual sense, I am not the one responsible to guide you to come into Islam.
Right.
I can just show you this is what I have, this is what I'm enjoying, this
Hmm.
is the benefit I have from the religion, Islam. So it's up to you to make up your mind to decide what you want, you
Right.
know? So, yeah. So,
Right.
mm,
Absolutely. And I think at least from what I'm seeing in the world, um, and I don't even know that this has to do with religion so much, but people are trying to grasp at something to believe in, something that makes sense beyond all of this materialism that we see every day, and all of the messages, some of which are not very healthy messages. And I like to explore and study different faith traditions. That's just something that I feel as a person, as a human being,
Mm.
if I understand how people worship, then it gives me a greater insight into the people and who they are. So
Right,
I'm
right.
very much, I like to learn about other religions and faith traditions. Um, and I think that every single one has something to offer, you know, has something to
Everyone,
offer.
everyone. Yeah,
Yes.
everyone.
Yeah.
And one of the beautiful thing about Islam is there's no discrimination. Like,
Yeah.
if you find anyone who is a Muslim and that person is trying to discriminate, trust me, they know nothing about Islam.
Yeah.
I am supposed to love you as a human, right? I
Absolutely.
am supposed to
Yeah.
encourage you and tell you, oh, Auntie Lisa, when you have spare time, try and read a little bit about Islam. I can recommend some few other stuff for you to look at, right?
I'm way ahead of you.
Yeah, I know that, and I love that. I really love that. Honestly, I'm proud of you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, and that's, we're all here for that. You know, I was talking to a young lady the other day. This story, it breaks my heart, but it also encourages me because I'm glad I was available to her. Um, so in America, and we talk very honestly, there are anti-Islamic sentiments all over the place.
Mm,
And it makes me sad because that tells me that these are people who have never met amazing Muslims. I've been around Muslims, I think, most of my life because I was a military kid. So we sponsored officers who were from other countries who happened to be Muslim. So I'm very familiar on some level with, you know, the Muslim and the Islamic faith, etc. But here in America, if you know, you turn on the news and you see that there's a lot of misunderstanding and disdain for Muslims. And so this young lady, bless her heart, she was dealing with a situation, and she went to law enforcement, and she said, Miss Lisa, they didn't really even seem to care, and I don't know why. And so I had to explain to her what was going on here in America right now. And now
mm,
she's here and she doesn't understand it because that's not how she thinks. But I
right.
told her, I said, you just need to be aware, and it's not your fault, but there's an anti a lot of things here in America that we have to fight through day in and day out. But you know, she's a young woman. She's trying to get her college education. I'm just, you know, I'm so proud of her, but she didn't understand why she was being treated that way. And so again, we're here to connect with each other. I happened to be in proximity of where she was. And
Right.
so I told her, I said, you know, when you show up with your beautiful hijab, for some people that scares them. I think it's beautiful, okay?
Oh, wow. Right.
But she didn't understand why they would not help her. And so I had to explain that. And I don't like having to explain that. You know, America has so many different religions and cultures, and everybody's here. You know, everybody from everywhere is here. So it makes me crazy to think that people are discriminating, because if you look around, you'll find people from every corner of the globe right here living in America.
Right. And I want to recommend something to you, right? Guys, if you're listening or any other person, I tell you for free, like one of the places that you find if you need stability when it comes to mental health, I can assure you, you should do well to explore Saudi Arabia. It's
Yes. Now, and you
it's
know what?
it's extremely calm here. Like there's no discrimination between the rich or the poor, or like the famous or people who are not famous, right? You don't get
Mm-hmm.
to sometimes you go to the mosque and you pray next to a millionaire, you don't even realize that person is a millionaire. You don't even know
Yeah.
because he's really humble.
Yeah.
It's really humble. So the environment itself gives you that kind like mental health. It makes you to breathe and understand that we are all just humans. Like having all those status, the luxuries should not stop you from being a human.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And I'm trying to think, I was somewhere in, I think I was in Eritrea. They have quite a few mosques in Eritrea. This was years ago, I think in the late 90s. And they had just gotten out of a war with Ethiopia. It was a civil war there. And so I remember we went into one of the mosques, and it was just the most beautiful thing. And we were in this war-torn place. I mean, they were still fixing things up, but every day we heard the call to prayer, you know, every
Oh,
day. Yes, we heard all of
oh,
that.
wait,
And it
quick
was
one,
so, pardon me?
quick one. I'm sorry for the interruption. Well, how was it like? How was it like hearing the call to prayer for the first time? How was it like?
Oh, it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
For real?
And I thought it was so, it was so humbling in this regard. In America, we get real busy.
And
We're busy
and
doing all sorts of stuff.
and how did that contribute to your mental health? Like just hearing the call to prayer for the first time.
Well, you want to know what it did, and I don't know if those who practice the Islamic faith, I don't know if this is the same for you, but I was busy doing something, and it makes you
Mm.
stop. It
Wow.
makes you stop and get very still. And that's important because we live in a world, and I'm going to speak as an American. We're busy doing stuff, and we always got stuff to do, and we're exhausted, we're tired. And I remember when I heard the call to prayer, it was very, very calming.
Mm.
It was so, it was literally like you were hearing a voice from God
Wow.
saying, slow down, it's time for you to focus on something else.
Mm.
And I said, wow, that's beautiful. And of course, you know, it happens 5 times a day. And I thought, okay, that's that. And I remember, even though I didn't understand it all, it
Mm.
was beautiful for me because I said, the message is, I don't care what you're doing. It is time to stop and honor a spirit and a power that is greater than you.
Right.
And just that alone, like I said, I don't, there are people of many different faiths watching, I'm sure. Um, there's something bigger than you out here. Okay. I'm a woman who almost died, and I'm still here. So I know that there is something bigger out there. So when I heard the call to prayer, what it did for me is it makes you stop,
Mm.
and it gets you unbusy, and it gets you meditative. Even if you're not a Muslim, it makes you meditate,
Wow.
and it makes you get still and breathe and focus.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a beautiful thing. And again, we were in the midst of an area in Eritrea. There was only one working hotel because the war had really decimated a lot of the area. Um, every morning there was a goat herder who came right in front of my window at the hotel, and so I could hear the goats, and you know, the roosters, and the call to prayer. I mean, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And that was a place I didn't know that I didn't think I would enjoy it as much, but I did. I really enjoyed Eritrea.
Right. I'm glad you
Yeah,
really enjoyed that.
it
So,
was great.
coming back to the subject, will you say the busy schedule or lack of having time for yourself in America is one of the contributing factor to mental health?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't, when I go to Africa, I see people with a lot less, who have a lot less than Americans, and they seem calmer. They
Mm.
seem more at peace. Um, and I think it's because we build artificial value systems. You
Wow.
know, you don't need 50 pair of shoes. You really don't. Okay.
Mm.
Um, you don't need 50 outfits. I mean, it's nice to have, I guess, but if that's all you're striving for, it's very empty.
Right. Right.
But we live in a capitalist nation that gives us those messages. And so it's a little difficult to kind of deprogram yourself from that. So you think you got to have everything that everybody has, and you really don't. You need very few things in life to be truly content and safe, even here in America. But
Mm.
if all of the messages around you are saying, you got to be rich, you got to drive this car, you got to do that, you got to do that, well, then you'll drive yourself crazy trying to get all that.
Okay, so you've been to Africa a couple of
Ye-
times. Like,
Yes.
how many countries have you been to again?
Oh, goodness. Let's see here. Johannesburg, Cape Town, Swaziland, Mozambique, Madagascar,
Mm.
Mauritius, Eritrea, Kenya,
Wow.
Ethiopia, Benin, Ghana. So I'm up to 11 now, and I want to get to
Okay.
some more.
Okay. So, based on your observation or your experience in Africa, like, what would you say, or what can you point out as some of the contributing factors to mental health, and how can our environment contribute towards like facilitating these people who are mentally unstable?
Africa, every time I go, one of the things that strikes me is the natural beauty of so many areas.
Mm.
To go out and see beautiful trees, flowers that I've never seen here in America. Um, you've got, places. I was in Cape Coast in Ghana, so you see
Right.
the ocean. Yes. Um, I would. You have so many beautiful, untouched, natural spaces that really lend themselves to mental health restoration. For example, I mean, we do these things here in America, we call them retreats. And so a company or a business or even a couple of friends will get together and they'll go to a retreat. A retreat is to get away from everything that we know here. And typically the retreat is in a nice tropical area or an area that has a lot of what we call green spaces,
Right.
spaces where there's lots of grass, lots of trees, etc. And so we we do retreats and we go to places like that, but in Africa those places are all around you.
Mm.
You have natural beauty all around you. Now, I mention that because when you talk about your environment, and the environment, and I wish we had more time, the environment, it encompasses a lot of things, but knowing that you can sit in a place that is naturally beautiful, where there are trees that are hundreds of years old, that matters. That's important. We, we try to escape to places like that. You
Mm.
you all have them in Africa, all over the place, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
so I think that's a real good having places like that will always contribute to good mental health. Now, in addition to that, if you have beautiful spaces like that and a caring community of people that support you when you need it, you'll have everything you need. You'll have everything you need. But
That's
we
right.
do have to change some attitudes and we have to educate people about mental health, about trauma. Like you mentioned, if people are dealing with memories of the war in Liberia, um, they have to work through that trauma. That's traumatic. My therapist told me having a brain aneurysm, that was a trauma for me. And
Mm.
so every year around the anniversary, kind of, there's a little bit of anxiety there. And so she said that I needed to reframe that so that it's less traumatic. And by reframing, she wanted me to look at that time, not not to remember the fact that I almost died, but let's celebrate the fact that I lived. And what can I
Yeah. Yeah.
do? And what can I do to raise awareness and educate people about brain health? And that's what I've started doing. And
Mm,
it makes a world of difference. So that's why it's
right.
helpful. It's helpful to go to a professional, because I never would have thought about that way. And so she gave me ideas in how to live my life differently going forward, even having had this traumatic thing happen. So for you, I would say, and for young people who have gone through that in Liberia, how can you all use that experience to educate the rest of the world? I mean, I know about it because I care about what goes on in Africa and I research things. But there
Right.
are a lot of people in the world who have no idea why that happened. They don't know about, the Buddha Baram camp. They don't know about any of that.
Mm,
But I was
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So you all, part of your mental health and part of part of having healthier mental health might be to reach out and educate the rest of the world about what they don't know. And a platform like yours is exactly the way to do it.
Right, right. And trust me, we are definitely going to have a part two of this discussion because myself, I'm learning a lot from you. And based on your expertise, I can tell you we are definitely going to have a part two of it. So there are people watching you for the first time, probably don't know where you're from. How can they follow you on Facebook, YouTube? Can you just tell the audience where they can follow you? Maybe your
Absolutely.
website, social media handles.
Yeah. Okay. So my website is Lisa Henry Jazz, LisaHenryJazz.com.
Wow.
LisaHenryJazz.com. You
Mm.
can find me on Facebook just under Lisa Henry, and I'm wearing a green head wrap, so you can't miss me.
Always in the hair
um,
wrap, right?
yep, always,
Seems
always wearing a head wrap. I've been doing that for years.
wow. It
And
looks good. It
let's
looks
see
good
here.
on you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
On Instagram, I'm Lisa Henry Jazz as well. And yeah, that's how you all can reach me.
yeah.
I'd love to hear
So
from
for those,
you.
right, for those of you who missed out on this episode, I am definitely definitely going to be an upload on YouTube, on Apple TV, on Spotify for podcasters. So you need to make sure I'm going to put her social media handles in the description on YouTube, and I'll also make sure to have her website. So you can go read about her, check her out, follow her on social media so that you can learn more. So that takes us now to the next question. Can you hear me? Oh, I think there's some technical issues. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, guys, we're having a little bit. I think just try to unmute yourself. I think you muted your mic. Just try to unmute. Check the button of. Can you hear me? Uh, it's on mute. Right. Mm. I think you have to unmute yourself. Look, check at the bottom of the live video. There should be a space where you see the sign of the microphone where you can just unmute yourself. Okay. I'll have to remove you. Thank you. Okay. Just a little bit, guys. I'm sorry a little bit, guys. So just a few seconds. We're going to bring back the guests and continue our discussion. We're having just a little bit of technical issue. She'll be back soon, okay? Oh,
Hello.
oh yeah. Hello.
Hello. I don't know what happened. Someone tried to call me and then it got kind of weird. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
we can understand. Like these things happen, you know. This
Yes.
is this is technology, so
Yeah.
yeah.
This will give you this will really try your mental health. It really will.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, while we're talking about mental health, we need to add a little bit of fun to spice up things, you know?
I'm sorry, say that again.
While we are like being serious and on the mental health issue, we also need to add a little bit of fun, like give it a break so that people can breathe in and breathe out
Yes.
and we continue.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right. So we now move to the next question. And the next question is, what can schools, workplaces, and our surrounding do to create healthier environments that support mental well-being?
I'm going to answer that question the same way that I did with the community. Um, it's the same thing. You destigmatize mental health
Mm,
and people who need mental health services.
right.
You create an environment that is inviting. I know that many of the workplaces here in America, they have posters up that, they say, if you need mental health services, call this number. So we have systems in place where people can begin to reach out and get the services that they need. That's important, because if you show that you are involved in and you care about your workers' mental health, your school, your students' mental health, then what happens is um, everybody shows up as their very best selves. Okay, you know,
Right.
um, when you work, when you're working with somebody, you want the very best version of that person to be there. Okay,
Mm,
um, and it starts with your mental health. If I come in to work and I'm grumpy and all of that, that doesn't serve you well. That doesn't serve your podcast well. That doesn't serve you,
right.
and it doesn't serve your listeners. So one person's mental health can impact so many people.
Mm,
So if you are like a leader at your job or at your school, um, have the discussions about mental health. You know, I know one of the things that I was talking to another gentleman from Nigeria, and he told me, he said one of the most frustrating um, things in his life right now is knowing that he's educating himself and he's doing the very best that he can, but he wonders if there will be jobs available for him when he gets to the place of really wanting to work and support a family and all of that. And I told him, I said, that's a great observation. I wonder how many other young people like you are worried about that. And if
mm,
you all can maybe go to the government and say, hey, you know what? We're trying to do the best we can, but can you guarantee us that there will be economic sectors that can hire us so that we can help build our own nation,
mm,
and make it better?
right.
Those are the conversations that need to be had. And I remember being in Ghana. the Buddha Baram camp really touched me on so many levels because there were people who didn't know from week to week if they were going to tear the camp down or not.
Mm,
And they still had to live their lives. And the question, of course, always came up, what happens if the government decides to just bulldoze the camp tomorrow?
yeah,
Where does everyone go?
yeah.
The level of mental stress that caused for people. As I was just talking to them, I talked to a few people, and I don't even know. You know, Muhammad, they had a smile for me, and I don't even know how they could smile.
Mm,
Because had I been in that situation, the stress would have been just so heavy. How do you
mm,
smile when you don't know from one moment to the next if you'll have a place to just lay your head?
right. So, like, me personally, like, I've experienced the Blue Baran camp, and I know exactly. I'm not speaking about other nationals, but as for Liberians, like, a lot of them, like, just like being in that environment. It's not like, okay, they cannot come out of it or they cannot afford, but they just feel comfortable living that way. You wake up,
Okay.
you wake up in the morning, everybody's just, talking here and talking there. It's all about party and all that stuff. So people feel like they feel comfortable being in that environment. You know,
Mm,
a lot of them can afford to go to Accra. They can afford to go to Kumasi, Tamale, all those places to rent an apartment, but they just feel comfortable being there. And some of them are being like in Ghana, like almost their whole life, 20 years, 30 years.
ah,
So
okay.
going back to Liberia becomes a problem because they are no longer used to the environment.
Ah, okay.
And
I get it.
some of them went there as refugees, like they got traumatized from the war and then left the country. So they still they are not certain like whether it's still okay for me to go back home or not. Like if I go back home, what are some of the facilities the government or that environment is going to provide for me now that I've gotten
Mm,
used to this, you know?
okay.
Yeah, so
Right.
yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. And see from it, that's why I tell people get out and travel because, you know, things appear one way from a visitor's perspective because I was a visitor there.
Mm,
But of course, you know the whole story. And so
yeah.
it's good to talk to people like you who are actually from Liberia who can tell
Right.
you the whole story. Because
Mm,
I did hear some of that from you, from other people. Like, you know, yeah, they could afford to kind of do something else, but this is just where they feel all right,
right.
you know. But I just, yeah, but I don't know how I got off on that tangent. But yeah, just I think that there are many different ways where places of business and schools, those are like the first places that can really take the lead in setting up mental health policies and practices. You know, like I
Mm,
said, there it can start as something really small. I saw a picture one time, and it was a tree. You call it the baobab tree, I believe, in Africa, and
mm,
it has a huge trunk, and so people would just sit around the tree, and it was like a community sort of gathering where you talk about everything, you know,
yeah. Mm,
and that's how it starts. Really, good mental health for me is about connection. And I feel great as a human being knowing that if I should get off track, I want to know that there are a group of people, a community that is there for me, who will support me, who won't laugh at me if I have to cry, you know, or if I'm feeling bad about something,
right.
or if I need something or I need help doing something. A lot of people won't go to get mental health services because they don't want to be laughed at, they don't want to be ostracized, they don't want people to think that they're less of a human being.
Or they don't want people saying, okay, this person is like not mature by keeping their problems. Speaking of, I want to say this to people. A lot of people don't know. Like, if you like, for me personally as a person, I'm a man, right? But if I'm overexcited, I cry, and I feel good.
Hmm.
If I'm sad, I cry the sorrow out of me, and I feel good.
Yes.
And if I feel depressed, I reach out to people that I feel like, okay, when I talk to this person, I'm going to feel okay. If it's going to cost me to feel okay, the overall goal is to stabilize my mental health, is to be in the
Yes.
right state of mind so that you don't bleed on people who did not cut you. Because if you don't find a way of resolving your mental instability, like, you end up going to bleed on people that did not really cut you. So you're
Yes.
always snappy. You're snappy whenever somebody talks to you. It's like you just threw an insult or stuff, you know?
Yes. And thank you for bringing that up, because I think that um, men men are always taught to be strong and not to show emotion. And here I'm very happy that in the last few years or so, I'm hearing more about men's groups happening where men are reaching out and saying, no, we're not going to hold everything in anymore. We're going to show our emotions. We're going to tell people when we are hurting so that we can get the mental health services that we need. Um, I'm very happy to see that,
Mm.
particularly with Black men, because Black men, particularly here in America, you've seen the news. Black men here in America are traumatized on a daily basis,
Mm.
and so mental health services are really key. But again, we don't have enough Black men who are even mental health therapists or psychologists or psychiatrists.
Right.
So men's groups are starting to form where the men just get together and they just start talking. The barbershop is a place here in America where a lot of Black men get together and just talk, and they feel a sense of community, and they feel
Mm.
like they can discuss issues and um, let out their feelings in a way that they can't do otherwise. So we we make a way to make it happen and to get our mental health needs addressed. Sometimes it's certainly not in the way that the officials would like, but
Yeah.
human to human, we find a way. But for Black men especially, that's so key what you said. And I hope that there are young men watching um, who are feeling free to show their emotions and to let people know when they need help. This is a rough world out here. I've been on this planet longer than you, and it's still hard.
Oh, wow.
It's still hard. I mean, I know how to navigate certain things, but every day I'm thinking, well, it's got to get easier, because it's
Mm.
supposed to get easier the longer you've been here. And
Yeah.
I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, this is some different stuff now.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's why I say you all are facing a different world than even the world that I grew up in.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Mm.
And so you're going to have to be really, really strong about taking your mental health back and
Yes. Yes.
making sure that environments that you're in do not contribute to bad mental health, because that can happen, you
Mm.
know
Yeah.
and call things out. you know a lot of times it just may be the environment. You're not going crazy,
Mm.
but you're just responding to what's going on around you.
Right. Right.
And so the question is, how do you change that? And if you can't change it, who's in charge that you can talk to and tell them, hey, you got to change this. You
Mm.
you got to change this,
Mm.
because we're young and we're trying to run the world and do positive things, but we can't do that because this environment is so ugly and it's so nasty and dirty and unfair, and you know
Right. Yeah. So
you
speaking
all have
of,
to raise your voice.
yeah. So speaking of the connection in the school environment, like, I'm a student, right?
Hmm.
I'm a student, and I know sometimes, like, there are some teachers, like, that are really flexible in school where you get to connect with them. You get to talk to them as a student. You get to express yourself like mentally. If you have an issue going on maybe with your academic performance and all that. But there are some teachers like they're just like every time you
Yeah.
meet them, they're just frowning on you, you know? And even they talk down on you, you don't feel like, okay, I'm someone who needs to go to school or someone who actually fits into a school environment.
Mhm.
So as a student who is like going to, because I know it's not like specifically me, but all the students who are or the audience who are watching now and encountering the same kind of situation, how do you
Mhm.
navigate between such a situation in school where you are going through a kind of depression, but then you can reach out to anyone because the environment is not friendly.
That, oh gosh. Whoo, we need to have a part 2 and a part 3 to this one. Um, here's the thing, Muhammad. Um, we're having this very healthy conversation
Mm,
about mental health. I will bet you that the teacher who is unkind, I'll bet you that no one has ever had a conversation with that teacher about mental health.
right.
And I'll bet you that teacher's family or his or her mother and father have never talked about mental health. And you begin to see how people can bring the negative mental health from generation to generation to generation. Now, I know this is going to sound strange, and I'm a teacher, okay? But as a teacher, because of my experience, I'm very sensitive to the issues of mental health.
Mm,
If you were to come into my classroom and you were to ask me a question or whatnot, I'm going to approach you a certain way, because I realize that as a teacher, I'm viewed in a certain way. And as a leader, I have to show you what it looks like to be caring, to be attentive, to listen to your concerns, because I want you to go out into the world and I want you to be attentive and to show concern
right.
and to be kind. So as a teacher, I can't expect you to do what I'm not willing to do. But see,
Right.
I've done that work. I've done that inner work. My experience being in social services, going to therapy, all of my life experiences, and, having a respect for people who are different than I am. I've
Mm,
done that work. I don't believe that because you're a young person that you're beneath me. I'm learning so much from younger people to this day, but I'm comfortable with that. There are people who are not comfortable with young people asking tough questions to older people, you
mm,
know,
yeah.
and sometimes the older people don't have the answers, but they don't want to admit that they don't have the
Mm,
answers. So here you come, Mr. Muhammad, and you're all smart and everything, and you're asking a question, and I don't have the answer, and so I'm gonna play my older wisdom card, and I'm gonna shoo you away,
just shut you up. I like that.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's not good. We still do that. There are people in this world who still do that, and I wish they didn't. But because you're such an intelligent person, I want you to understand, and for all of the young people listening, when you come across older people who discount you or who ignore you, understand that they've not addressed their own mental health. They've not had these conversations. So I'm hoping that people who watch this, they might get an idea to, talk about mental health around the family dinner table.
Right. Right.
Who knows?
Who
You
knows?
know,
Like, yeah.
each one teach one.
Right.
So
I
yeah,
like
so
that. I like that.
give the teachers some slack. I mean, it's a rough world out here for teachers right now.
I can understand. I can understand. Yeah, I mean, it's a rough world for all humans. That's why we need to create a space of love.
Yes.
I mean, that's something I just want to spread love for as long as I live. Just love, like love people. It doesn't matter whether they love me back or not, because I like it when people smile. I like it when people feel good around me. I like it when people are succeeding because like I'm around them. You know, I'm not the reason they are succeeding, but I'm just contributing to their success, and that's something that makes me happy. And once that person is smiling, you get to see it becomes a little bit mentally stable, you know. So I think
Muhammad, yeah,
yeah,
you are a very evolved human being.
yeah,
There aren't many who think like you. And so what you will find in this world is that a man like you, a person like people will see you and they will see that you actually walk the talk.
yeah,
You are a bit of an anomaly. You're puzzling
mm,
because they're not like that. They haven't even begun to think that deeply yet.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, but I'm very encouraged because if you can already have that frame of mind, there's just no telling what amazing stuff you're going to do in the world.
Right, right. Because sometimes it's disturbing. Like I don't have a space in my heart to keep a malice. Like I don't care the way you see me, or I don't care how you interpret me being nice to you. I just want you to feel good. Like making you feel good is part of my life.
Wow.
It's part
You
of
are
my
evolved.
yeah, like it's part of my life. Like that's what I do. So I'm not going to change because of other people's attitude. When it gets to a point where I feel like, oh, this thing is like disturbing and is about to affect my mental health, I just cut you off, like from a distance.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you've got good boundaries. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. I mean,
Yeah,
and you're saying all of the things that I hope people are listening to. Boundaries are important. Knowing where your limit is very important. And you do. You know where your limit is.
yeah,
Young people, you know where your limit is. You must create boundaries. If there are people coming into your space and they're negative, they're rude, um, they do not spread the love, okay? And you know that you really can't operate in an area like that, then either you got to cut them out of your life or you have to leave the area.
right,
And see, I'm like you. If I get into a space and it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel like it's safe, I leave.
right, right.
I don't
Know when
argue
to
about
stay.
it. I just
Yeah,
leave.
know when to stay and when to
Yeah,
leave.
yes,
Yeah.
that's important.
So, yeah. So moving on to the next question, Miss Lisa, how can we encourage more open conversation about mental health in everyday life?
Like I said, literally just getting together as a community. Um, and I think we women do that naturally. Okay. Maybe for young men, I don't know how easily you all do it. Um, but I know that we have women groups all over the place here in America. Okay.
Mm,
Um, but as I said, we're seeing more men's groups popping up just to talk about things and to talk about feelings and to really explore how can I be healthier from a mental standpoint. It's never too young to do that. So, it can start with, Muhammad's Monday night group,
yeah.
you know,
Mm,
just something where you all sit around in a very trusting environment and you talk about your successes, your failures, your struggles, and your dreams. I don't think we dream enough. We don't talk about our dreams enough.
yeah.
Everybody's just trying to get from one day to the next to the next. Let's talk about our dreams. Let's talk about the things that we want to see. You talked about wanting to just spread love. What does that look like? Maybe that looks like a whole nother podcast later on down the road. the Love
Right.
Podcast. You
Right.
know?
And you guys should anticipate that, right?
Yeah,
Coming
right.
up so. Yeah. Bringing your first
Yeah,
episode.
absolutely. So yeah, I mean, people getting together and just talking and not being afraid to talk, and also trusting each other to support each other. That's important.
Mm,
It's important.
yeah.